your parents want to throw away the cards, like, hey, 小弟, 几岁了还玩这种?
Yeah. And randomly one day
and
they
you're
have a
like-
spring cleaning vibes, right?
Oh,
Then
yeah,
come back,
yeah.
what happened? Oh, 丢掉，我想丢掉。
我的莲藕，
For our listeners, tune in every week. They may not know you.
Oh,
you know,
shit, we're live.
Introduce yourself. Yeah.
So I'm Benjamin Huang, Ben Huang. I run a very small team that runs Singapore's #1 magic store, Grey Ogre Games. You can check
Singapore
us out.
#1 magic store on Singapore #1 financial podcast.
Yeah.
Hey, control yourself. Control yourself.
Before we were, a store, we were consultants for other game stores, primarily from Japan, China, and Germany in the space.
What happens in consulting for game stores?
Really, my only skill is that I can speak a couple of languages. So that's the only thing, and barely speak one of the languages, like Japanese. Like I can get to the airport and to the hotel and order food and then talk about business, and there's nothing in between.
No,
like
but I talk about business in Japanese.
Yeah. So a little bit like chotodake, and I guess drink a bunch of sake and not get drunk.
It is important. It's an East
Yeah.
Asian business culture. Yes.
Well, yeah. And so the consulting in that space was primarily to just help them do business in markets that they may feel underprepared for, right? Like if they don't feel like they can interface with a primarily American audience, or if they don't know how to sort out certain things in different countries. That was really my role. Me and a friend of mine did that up to about 2015, and then we two guys from another store that I used to run in Singapore, they left the store. They're like, hey, we want to start another store. You want to start one of us? And then we're like, okay, yeah, why not? And so we've been operating out of Club Street this is our eighth year, which by Club Street terms makes me terribly old.
Very amazing.
Terribly old.
very
I wouldn't say
old.
amazing, just very old.
It's age. And today joining me, there's Alan. Alan, you want to introduce yourself, your game store or your game place?
store.
Important plug. Yes.
yeah, plug. Okay, actually, I help Reggie, at first thing. So
Yes.
we host a Chinese show called Li Cai Oh Yeah. Please stay tuned and listen. Yeah, Li Cai Oh Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah to the yeah. Yeah, like
Yeah, to the yeah. Big brain. Yeah, I also have a board game cafe called Gaming on the Table. So you all can come Yishun Safra and have a look.
Yeah,
Play
so
some games.
Definitely, and I got him in because I think if I didn't get him in, we'll end up having a very financial discussion around like gaming cards and, and all that kind of stuff, right?
That's
So
not the
not the
Not the
like,
vibe you want.
not the
Okay.
vibe I want. So I wanted the Alan to come in because he's like pretty geeky in this space also to share with us a little bit more and like poke questions, right? To Ben,
Sure,
It's like,
sure.
how does this whole thing
Yeah,
work,
yeah.
right? So maybe I can start off. The first question is right, like how do people even value trading cards? And specifically, you guys only deal in Magic, right?
Yeah. So we are 99.9. It's very, very.
That's only lah. It's like
Only.
bacteria, like 9.9.
Yeah.
Is only do magic only lah.
that
Yes.
disinfectant, the advertisement, 99.9% of germs. We only do Magic, and to answer your question, I think there's a couple of axes lah. One is the collectability of the card. One is the utility of the card. So there is a game behind it, despite all the selling of it as a collectible. The game
And
is
all
very
these, like,
vibrant.
people from outside that like don't look at the game and they just want like
Yeah.
how to put money.
Yeah,
Right? How am I gonna make money?
How to make the bucks? How to make
Yeah.
And so the game is vibrant. It's they print plenty of sets. In fact, this year alone, I think they've printed something along the lines of 13 different releases. Very, very, very vibrant, and it goes all the way from the people who compete to play at the highest level. So think of it as like the PGA or the World Cup or whatever, and the people who just play casually, who just want to play with their friends. They just get a couple of beers, sit around a table, and then play through the night. Some of them you also know. So because of that, there's that utility element, and then there's the collectability element. So the fact that these cards have some sort of market value, and the market value is typically defined by what the store or the retailer or the kind of the people who prop up the market like us are willing to pay, and what they're asking to sell it for. So the consumer, the peer-to-peer kind of like trading happens in the middle range, right? A little bit more than what the buy list value is, or the bid and the ask is. And
Thanks for referencing. Yeah, trying very hard to use language that our people understand.
Yeah. So that's a lot of what happens when in a location on Club Street. People come in who work in the area or work in related spaces in the area, and then they'll ask, hey, I've been looking at this game for a while, and I work at a M&A, or I work at the FX desk, and I want to know why the bid and ask spread is so large. And then my usual response is you see the lights? You see the 5 other guys standing around that work in this space? Yeah, that's what the spread pays for.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then they're like, oh, okay. But then, so everyone thinks that they can do it better. They can cut out the middleman,
which are you guys,
which are us, and which is us. And so I always say, there's always somebody who'll do it for less than us. But what you get when you come to us is that you get to buy anything you want. Everything that you want, we have.
You're so certain about it.
Wow. I mean, typically to 95% confidence.
I mean, there's a reason why you're the number one magic card store, right?
No, and I think, to be honest, the industry is also immature in that regard, right? It's very naive, and it thinks that it can continue to compete and develop its product along the lines that it's been doing for the past 30 years. The game is 30 years old, right? The game was being sold here from the get-go. Was being sold out of comic stores, and there were 1 or 2 very enterprising board game places, tabletop gaming places.
Tabletop. Different. Small little side story. Okay, I went to one of these kind of tabletop places.
Yeah.
I went, I was so ignorant. I was like, wow, such a nice board game store. And then someone on the side was like, it's tabletop. I was like, whoa, relax, right? You're just like alienating someone like me, which is just like, I just discovered that. It was so cute, such a cute place.
So I think that's part of the problem is that when I say naive and immature, I think that is really endemic of the approach that a lot of the people take. There is a kind of soft gatekeeping, a kind of I only want to sell to the consumers who know what the product is, right? I only want to sell to people I understand, who people I jive with, who people who I vibe with, right? And so inevitably, all these businesses become like little boys clubs, right? Little boys clubs and little boys clubs. So
I get it. Yes,
and that's not the way it always has to be. And suddenly when you're in a location like ours, it can't always be like that. So we have very diverse, culturally and in terms of gender, a very diverse kind of audience. And so our outlook is just like that as well, right? We have to be a little bit more welcoming, a bit more accommodating, a little bit more educational rather than exclusive. Yeah.
So that helps you fetch a better price for your cards.
Yeah. I mean, it's I always use it's like going to a nice coffee place as opposed to
Kopitiam
or Starbucks or Kopitiam, right? It's not soulless, right? And
okay, fair. So then, from that viewpoint, in other words, there's some sort of cartel going on when it comes to price fixing. In the utility space.
Yeah. So thanks for going back to that. It's not entirely utility driven, it's also collectability driven. So there is this relationship. So something that is both useful and collectible typically commands a very high price. Right? So if it's both scarce and highly in demand, which is it's no brainer, right? Like that kind of thing would be very, very pricey. But some of it, if you're talking about the cartels, a lot of it is propped up by common belief that a lot of
so spiritual.
Common belief that a lot of retailers or institutions have in the space, which is that
there are institutions in the space.
Some of them have been around for like 30 odd years. So at the start of the game, then there's some whose histories are so entwined with the history of the game. Because when you develop a product like that, you need someone to sell it, right? You need a retailer, a kind of retail partner. So there's some that are situated so close to the development home of this game, Renton, Washington, that they're almost synonymous. And so those are the people that if you wanted to talk about cartel, that's the closest thing, because their volume that they go through and their ability to, or the beliefs that they have toward the game are so strong that rest of the market follows them. And, everyone predicates almost their pricing all on their pricing. Everyone just follows. It's just like how you just follow the leader, and then you kind of take little deviations on the side. Maybe you think, okay, I can do better here. I can do better there. The one major deviation from that is the Japanese market, which has its own market leaders and has just a mind of its own, really. Yeah, and they buy and they sell for prices that they can only do in Japan.
Wow.
Yeah.
Give us some color.
Some color. There is for the longest time, a lot of our consulting was profitable because there was this huge arbitrage gap between what they paid in Japan, the bid price,
And the
and
rest of the world.
the ask price in America. So my routes were, I have a set of instructions from my friends in Japan. Okay, we need you to do this, and also you need to buy X number of cards for us. And I'm like, okay, sure. And I look at the pricing and I'm like, okay, with the yen being 25% ahead of the dollar, yeah, this is enough for me. Yeah, we will go, and the beauty of it is all pre-sold. It's like they have bought 40 of each copy. All you have to do is provide the capital, and if you don't even have to provide capital, sometimes they give you the capital. They're like, hey, can you go and buy these for us? And so whatever you make is the difference, the delta between what you can acquire it for. So early days, I was known at a lot of these conventions and trade shows as just that one kid from Singapore with a backpack. And I would ask always, hey, if I buy more, can you give me a better price? And
Wow.
and yeah, that became a thing for a while. But as currency started to change, FX, and also the arbitrage became more obvious, and other entities moved in. People started to do it for less, right? Which is my first lesson in
Business.
there's always somebody who will do it for less than you. So yeah, then we moved on to building a more retail-focused product.
Actually, in Japan, there's one. Last time I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh cards also. So Yu-Gi-Oh cards are also
No,
there's.
you sure you can talk about Yu-Gi-Oh cards, not the magic cards.
Contain the unstoppable Exodia. Impossible!
No, I mean there's one uncle. No, there's one uncle who had the
No
same.
insult, no
Yeah,
insult.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, all those
Yeah.
things. Yes.
There's a guy, with
Yeah,
the
the-
vest.
Yes, there's one uncle. He will travel all around Asia to trade cards. He will bring also like one backpack. We call her Uncle Fuji. Yeah, so we will check when he comes
is he
Singapore.
Singaporean or is he
No,
like
he's a Japanese. Yeah, he knows.
Wait, you know Uncle Fuji?
Oh, yeah. So
Yeah.
for a long time, the game in Singapore, a lot of it gathered outside Bishan MRT.
Oh yeah. Bishan MRT, wrestling cards.
It was a
is there one?
and it was such a big thing that among my friends we would call it the center of cultural excellence because it was really it was culture in many ways. There were many different card games.
Yes.
And there was also a lot of choice.
Let me breathe.
I learned a lot of choice Hokkien phrases there.
Okay.
From people I wouldn't have otherwise met. And but yeah. So Uncle Fuji would bring both. He would bring everything. He'd bring Yu-Gi-Oh, he'd bring Pokemon, he'd bring Magic.
Yeah.
And then once he was done doing his Yu-Gi-Oh thing, he would go and interface with the Pokemon people. Once he was done with that, he would go and do the Magic thing.
Yeah, amazing.
Cultural excellence.
He even has a vest. I don't know if he still wore the vest when you met him. He had like a vest. It was like khaki colored. He looked like Ash from Pokemon.
Yeah. He
He
got
shot of a
feel.
cap
I
and a
think he
little
modeled after him.
furry hairball on his shoulder.
Yeah, I come here do trading. Then everybody were like, yeah, it's what he did. I buy cards and sell cards.
No, I'm not the first, and I certainly won't be the last. And I think the only thing that I really took away from it was that this can't last forever, and we need to build something that lasts not forever either, but a little bit longer, a little bit more longevity, right? Fast, it's easy to go. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together, right?
Cheesy one-liner.
Yeah.
Always dropping me the one-liners. Okay, fair. So then I think he brought out an interesting point. Right? Like there's Yu-Gi-Oh, it's Pokemon, all that. I think even period of time there were like wrestling cards, right?
Yeah.
WWE, like I'm coming from like the very
Okay,
typical
yeah.
financial kind of
Yep.
person looking to invest from an alternative investment
Yeah.
point of view, right? How do I pick the game? Like
Pick
should
the
I
game,
like should I buy Yu-Gi-Oh cards or should I invest in like Pokemon cards or like
I think unlike a strict financial product or instrument, there needs to be some sort of like resonance with you lah. You need to like feel like you like the thing, whatever the thing is, whether it's Yu-Gi-Oh, Magic, NFTs,
So
whether
in
it's
other words, if
watches, it's handbags, it's bottles of wine, whatever it is, there needs to be a little bit of that connection, and I think that's what keeps it fun for a lot of these people. There is this kind of like for some people it's a very marginal, but there is some argument that there's utility lah, right? There's utility to.
I love how you say marginal. Utility very marginal.
I've
depending
seen
on how
some
you look
people.
at it.
There's a guy that comes to my store who has never played with his cards. Like he just buys the cards and then but he only wants to buy cards that he thinks he would play with.
But
I'm
he never
like,
plays.
hello friend, I don't ever see you playing. But that's it's to each their own. So yeah, I think that there is that level of it lah. But if you were to talk to me as if you were to say, hey Ben, what is the number one reason why Magic is a better collectible in terms of the financial elements of it, I would just say that the player base is large lah, right? The player base is large. The actors in the market are so varied and so deep seated and developed that it is almost like trading gold or any other commodity lah, right? There is so much of infrastructure, so much built around it, right? Whereas say with something more happening, something cooler, something newer, right? Like Flesh and Blood, which is a game that both of you have not mentioned, and a game like Pokemon, where a lot of it is transient kind of interest, like right, the people are interested in it for a while, and then they exit, right, and it's always thought of as this kind of nostalgic, like, oh yeah, I remember when I played Pokemon, right? Whereas Magic is more persistent, yeah. So I think that's appealing.
Fair. I mean, when it comes to collectibles, the base of the people that are interested in it matters so much, right? Like there is some correlation to the prices, and the people that are willing to pay for it.
The upside,
the
the
upside
downside,
of it, based on the growth of the community, right? So specifically for Magic, is it growing?
I think they've done a very good job of growing the community, and it's almost in a very taken a very cynical, I won't say cynical, very practical approach to it, which is to say that the people who are entrenched, the people who love the game, will always love the game, right? The change, like some people will leave, come and go, but the game that group stays about same or grows at a very slow upward kind of rate. But what they've started to try and do is to get more people in adjacent spaces interested in the game. So they've done collaborations with I think they started with Walking Dead, then they did Stranger Things, then they've done Warhammer 40k, which is a tabletop, not a board game.
Thank you. Yes.
And they're gonna do Lord of the Rings, they're gonna do Doctor Who, they're gonna grab all the other subcultural nerdy kind of like.
Doctor Who is like the UK thing, right?
Yeah,
that
yeah.
super.
So Doctor Who went through a kind of renaissance in 2009. They redid the whole thing. They got a whole bunch of new writers, and so it has this kind of cult following that I think started on like Tumblr and like Reddit and stuff like that. And so it's kind of built up, and so they are very. I think the parent company Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast, they're very good at identifying. Okay, this is a kind of community that's ripe for us to cross over into. And then we're gonna just get a whole bunch of players, and it doesn't matter because they're taking almost a Disney-like approach to it. The more licensees we have, the more collaborations we have, the better it is for us because we are the underlying brand is their assumption.
So, but you are in this space. It doesn't sound like you are buying and holding. Right, it feels like you are part of the flows. Right, you are like selling, you're trading, and all that.
I think that there's definitely the flow, and the flow keeps the lights on and hires the five guys. But
shout out to you five guys. Yes.
It's more than five.
More than five.
But I think that a lot of it is also market making and providing like consumer confidence. So imagine if you would open like a booster pack. So the game is primarily sold in randomized packs, kind of like you do on like Hearthstone or any of these gacha games, like really, right? And but what kind of props up the consumer confidence is that the store will pay X dollars for this chase card in this set, right? And that is true throughout every set in the game. And so what we do in Singapore, more so than others, is to say, look, we pay this price, and we are the kind of like fulcrum for you to like make your decisions based off of that. And a lot of it for us is building or making the market, like saying that, look, if because we're like this, you can feel confident in buying cards, in selling them, in trading for them, and all of these things because there is this underlying entity that provides this kind of confidence. And we do it by predicating our prices off what Card Kingdom does in Seattle, Washington. So there is this kind of like trickle down effect, I guess, or like we know that there is some sort of confidence on that side too, lah.
So when new sets comes out, you all will straight away evaluate which card you set the pricing, which card is useful.
Yes. So there's a whole game behind that, lah. There was like, there's people who have access early because they're translators. There are people who have access early because they're distributors, and then they use that to gain an unfair advantage. So if a new card's coming out, then you know about how it's going to influence the cards in the past. So you can go out and buy all the things in the past.
So it's not about buying the new card. It's just about having the advanced information to know how it will rig every other thing.
Yep. So that's something that people do.
That's not fun to play. I cannot play. It's like, I'm so outside, you know.
And so that is part of the problem. I think that because of all these, they're kind of antiquated, right? Archaic kind of like structures that are in place that you have to ship the boxes to the holding facility somewhere, and then the guy who's in charge of it can open the boxes and be like, oh look, there's a new card. Oh, I guess I should go out and buy every single copy of this now, right? And so as an investor, or to talk about it as a financial product, when you say there's that resonance, that there's that kind of like stability and everything, you also have to fight against that structure, right? That there are these big companies who have access to all this information who are already going to be doing all of this in advance. But the truth is,
you can observe price movements ahead also.
Yeah, you can observe price movements ahead. You can even predict. But I think the truth is, as the flow guy, you don't really care. Because if you're the flow guy, a rising tide lifts all boats. One, two, whatever value, if you think of the market as a whole, whatever value gets displaced in one place will get reassigned somewhere else, right? So I think that there's a lot of fear with regard to that. Hey, there's so much, to go up against. But there's also not a lot of reason to be worried about it if you approach it the right way, which is think of it as a transaction. Don't think of it as I need to buy A for X price and then sell it for
higher.
So long as I can get X plus something, that's good enough for me.
Yeah, but you're the flow guy. Not everyone is the flow guy.
So we're both. So to go back to your question, part of that market making involves us buying up a lot of stock and then holding on to it, and or deciding we need to move this to another location and selling it there. So we have a company. We have our own company in the US, in Australia, and then we have the Japanese retailers that we still work with. And so we do that kind of like, hey, we bought X amount of stuff, we're going to apportion it, we're going to give A here, going to give B here, going to give C there. So part of it is also carving up that pie and deciding, okay, this stays in Singapore to build the market, to provide, something for the players to play with, the collectors to collect. But we also need to farm off the rest to create cash flow for the business.
Farm off the rest.
Yeah. And farm literally, because we make a very small margin, if any, on those on that. But that to us makes sense because we're creating cash flow for Singapore, right? The players feel like, oh yeah, I have confidence in my cards because I can always get about 55 to 65% of my retail from these guys at GreyOgreGames.com.
Nice. Thanks for the plug. GreyOgreGames.com. Okay, yeah. I'll send you the invoice later.
But being a person, for example, me as an investor, because we know that all these trading card games, there are gradings. There's PSA, there's a few where they grade, pristine grade. So, for example, as a collector, do I really need to go for like PSA 10?
Yeah.
At the start, because I think PSA 10 kept very high price.
Yeah.
Especially, for all trading card games. 10 is the lowest, one of the few lowest count when they evaluate.
So what he's talking about is just population counts, right? There's a certification and there's a grading company, a company that tells you how pristine your card is, and then they tell you out of all of the ones that we have certified or graded, we this is the top 3 or in the top 3 or top 5 or top 8. And so there is a huge multiplier effect on the value of the card. So to give you a sense, PSA 10 or BGS 10 Alpha Black Lotus would, at some point command close to $1 million. And if you bought it in very poor, very beat up condition, it could be just north of 60 grand. That is the divide, right? It's a huge multiplier. So to answer your question in terms of the grading and what it adds to the value, it's just a multiplier effect as well on your return, right? If you were to buy a pristine card, then even though it's more money that you put down now, which is say 10 times or 17 times of this amount, you would stand to gain a lot more in the future, right? And that jump is exponential, right? The $60,000 beat up copy of the Alpha Black Lotus that you bought is not going to triple, right? But it's more likely that the pristine copy is going to triple because it's more scarce. There's less of them in the world. There are only maybe 5 or 6 others at Alpha Lotuses, maybe 11 of them that can compete with your 10, right? So if 6 of them are accounted for, they're in collections that won't move until something drastic happens, then you only have 4 others to compete with or 5 others to compete with. And as a result, you can really name your price. And that point almost becomes like art, right? Where it's, just one buyer, one seller. There is no real market, there's no bid ask because it's a unique item.
So how many Black Lotuses do you have? That's the $1 million question, right?
There's someone in Singapore who has more than us.
Really?
Yeah. But I think this is different approaches lah. And but I think we have 7 in the store.
How many 10s?
10s. No, I don't think we have anything that would be a 10. And then we have some on consignment with our friends in Japan. And then personally, I own 2. One that's nice and one that's for me to play with. Yeah, and I think all my business partners have one of their own. Yeah, and it's just a way to connect with the game, but it's also a way to say, hey, as the game does better, we also do better in terms of our finances lah.
Yours are like 9, 8.
No. I have one. So I the nice one I have is like a 9, and the one I play with is a crazy story. We were at a convention in Houston.
Someone dropped it on the floor.
Similar. So we were at the back of the hall, and then this guy. He looks military. He walks all the way straight from the front, all the way to the back of the hall. I'm like, hey sir, I'll be with you in like 20 minutes. He stands there the whole time. He sits down with me, and then he opens up a binder, and it's like fresh out of 93. This is probably in 2016, 2015, 2016. So it's a 23-year-old binder, and it's just cards from the first edition, the first set. And he's like, oh yeah, I used to play, then I lost interest, and I picked it up only recently again, and I was looking through the card prices. And so this is one of those like fairy tale stories that you're like, okay, how the heck did you come from the entrance all the way to the back of the hall where I'm at, and why do you pick us? But then because he had been browsing and looking at the cards and looking at the prices and so excited about it, he had, those ring binders? He had kind of folded one like that, and he had closed the binder on top of it. So the Lotus happened to be, because it's a B, on the bottom third of the thing, and they got like a ring mark there lah. Think of if you put between the top of your folder and the ring binder itself, you kind of pressed it. So there's this very slight impression there. At the end of the whole year, I adopted that Lotus as mine lah, binder one. So I adopted this Lotus, and yeah, it's still with me. Went to the Tokyo Art Show with me. So in 2018, they did a 25th anniversary art show in Shinjuku. So the Japanese really love it. The Japanese, just the next level. They rented a whole space in Shinjuku, and you could walk around, and you had original pieces of magic art, and you had one display of like the most famous 9 cards from the game, which were mine. So they borrowed it from me, and they said, "Oh Ben, can we borrow it for the show?" And they put the cards there. I took my picture next to it like a proud parent. Hey, look, my boy's first day at school. And yeah. So that Lotus I probably never sell. I probably sign the 9 before I sell that one. Yeah.
There's a story behind it.
Yeah, a good story too.
Then like online, sometimes like you watch content, right? And then,
Yeah.
And then there are all these people that they buy the whole box.
Yeah.
And then they like open it up. And I think some people say, okay, other than you guys, they are like flipping through your old Magic collection, right? At this point in time, probably you can grey ogre games, right? Okay, so .com, yes. Must send invoice. Other than all of you, I think there's also other people that are thinking, like, how about I just buy the whole box?
Yeah.
And then I can just, rip this open, and it may work. Right, but what is the net value if I
I mean, I always tell my customers this, and this is people that come into the store and for the express purpose of opening a box, I tell them
express purpose.
If it was profitable for you to open the box, don't you think I would have opened it already? Right. So a lot of businesses in Singapore, and back to this naive, immature, like growing pains kind of like industry, they're still very box oriented, and they believe that selling the box to the customer is good. And I think that selling the box to the customer is good if they understand that they're buying the box for the fun of opening the box, right? Like you say, people create content around that. But if they think that it's financially viable, then the real question you have to ask is, why isn't the guy who buys this box at the retailer price, at the distributor price, why isn't he opening himself, right? Why does he still have them in stock, right? And so I think that a lot of people use it as a kind of like pseudo gambling. They just come up, they're like, oh, I got $140 to blow. Let me go and buy a box of this set, right? And that's fun too, because you accept that you set a certain price, certain amount, and you say, it's okay, I'm going to spend this, and I'm going to see what cards I get. As opposed to like, I'm going to spend X dollars on GeorgGames.com where you can buy exactly the card that you want, right? So I think two very different things. It's like the people who buy 4D or buy Toto, right? They have a certain amount they want to spend. And it's to buy a little bit of hope, buy a little bit of fun, buy a little, that sweat where you're like looking at the card and you're like,
And then you think by doing this, the card will change.
Yeah.
Right? Blackjack.
Or like when we discuss off camera where people go and pray.
Just now you were saying temple channel, temple. Pikachu. Actually, for like this hobby, other than that, those are the other notable cards.
Okay, so there's the top 9 cards. They call the Power 9 because that's a tacky name. But yeah, they just represent cards that when they developed the game, they weren't sure how to position these cards. And the creator of the game never intended people to have access to all the cards in the set. He thought of it as a kind of like, you play what you have, and then if you meet somebody who has an interesting card, you trade it with them. And he never thought that there would be this vibrant secondary market behind it, right? So today, if you want to play competitively, you need to have 4 of every like great card to put in your deck, right?
Yes.
And that
Is it like a part of the requirement, or it's like
No, it's
without
like
that you will definitely lose?
it's like going to play field soccer and showing up in slippers, right?
Okay.
Like
Bao
you can play. Yeah, it might hurt.
Yeah.
And
It will hurt.
Will hurt. You get beat up a lot.
Yes.
You may miss a few toes at the end of it. Yeah, so it's kind of like that because everyone's decks are going to be optimized for that. And not to say that there aren't people who try to take a budget approach. And there's a lot of content that's built for people who are approaching the game in an accessible manner. But when you talk about the cards that are most famous, and so those are the cards that were so powerful. And they were powerful because they were ever only intended to be so scarce, and maybe you talked about, hey, this guy at this store, he has this, or in my
It's like
time
a badge
it was
of honor, right?
secondary school, like, this guy in this class has this guy,
Center of Cultural Excellence. Never forget that line. Yes.
And but so these cards, the 5 moxes. So there's like 5 moxen. So they represent jewelry, like pearl, sapphire, jet, ruby, emerald. And so they're so iconic that people have done jewelry lines based on these things. They take the art of the card and they just go and get a stone and they put it into the thing. And then there's 3 other blue cards. So if you played Pokemon or any other game, there is one color above all that kind of stood out in the early days of this game. And it was really, really good, right? Yeah, it's just, the difference is worlds apart. It's like Lionel Messi and the rest of us trying to play football. Yeah.
Okay.
And that color makes up the other 3 of the cards, and obviously the Lotus is the 9th.
Is it true that no other card that comes after will rival that kind of value or like price of these cards?
I think that's a very interesting conversation to have now, because they just did a 30th anniversary commemorative set. And so
they republish old cards?
They republish these old cards in a non-tournament legal manner. So the idea is...
Wait, what's a tournament legal?
Okay. So the card is printed, a magic card is printed on 2 sides, and one is the actual card itself, and the back is just a standardized back. So think of it as if you were playing with like bicycle playing cards or whatever, all the backs would be the same. And so to make the game, to preserve the integrity of the game at the early years, they printed the same card back for all the sets. And the idea was to you could only play if your deck all matched, right? So that you couldn't like mark a card or like know when you're going to draw something different. So that's the early notions of tournament legality. And then what they did on top of that was to say in 94, they're like, hey, there are people who just want to collect the game. So why don't we make a set that looks like all the normal cards on the front, but make it square cornered and have a different back so that people can put it in the binder and appreciate it. So what they've done just this past weekend is released a set that says, hey, it's the 30th anniversary, and we want to give you a way to collect these super old, super rare, super powerful cards, but in a non-tournament legal. So they changed the back. And then the front is somewhat the same, but they've updated it for the modern game, right? To say that they won't ever surpass these cards is true, because I think that on the underlying all of that is the scarcity. So if you think about Alpha, the first ever set that was printed, there was only 1,080 pieces of every rare card in that set. Which means that if I have 2 Lotuses and you had 1078 Lotuses, Alpha Lotuses, then we would have the world supply, right?
Hopefully lah.
Hopefully. Right? GrioGames.com. But
you probably know where are some of these. Like you probably
you know,
like,
and
your network,
and
like,
soon we'll be able to talk about a project that that will help with that. But so to answer that question, I don't think that anything is going to surpass those cards. What did happen was that it shook some confidence in what's called the reserve list. So now the reserve list is a list of cards that the parent company, Wizards of the Coast, subsidiary of Hasbro, has promised not to reprint. They say, okay, for the sake of we had this policy in the past where we wouldn't reprint the certain rares from certain sets, the rarest cards in each of these sets, and then we're not going to break that promise lah. So they made a list of these cards. So what happened when they announced these reprints, these non-competitive legal reprints or tournament legal reprints, was that there was some confidence was shaken, right? Because a lot of these cards derive their value from their utility in a casual setting, in a non-tournament, like just 4 of us playing around a table, a couple of beers kind of setting. So people are like, oh, well, if that's the case, then the utility of those cards kind of like is diminished, right? Because they still maintain their utility, but the scarcity thing has been solved, or there's been added supply. So yeah, there was a bit of a shake-up there. But the truth is, they're selling these cards in $1,000 boxes. So for $1,000, you get 60 Magic cards. And they're all randomized, so there's different rarities, like 10 commons, 3 uncommons, 1 rare. And so the odds of getting that, you might as well just go and buy the real thing. GrioGames.com. Or the original commemorative set, which was also very fairly priced.
Just put a rolling banner. Just put a rolling banner. Right? Don't need to plug already. Yeah.
So I think that, to answer that question, nothing will probably surpass prices of Alpha cards. But similarly, I think of it as it's a genius, if not very cynical move, is to embrace the fact that the player base is not going anywhere. So the more you put playable cards, or non-tournament but casually playable cards, in the hands of players, the more good it does for the game as a whole.
Makes them desire the actual one.
Exactly.
Yes.
It creates that kind of like upgrade mentality, right?
The iPhone, Huawei, Xiaomi.
iPhone, your car, your house,
yeah.
everything in Singaporean life is in you're looking for the next upgrade. I don't think you need a lot to be happy.
Yeah, you just need 7 Black
Yeah.
Lotus.
But the business to me, and the company, and all the projects that we do, it's the most engaging game I've ever played.
Fair.
Right?
I agree with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You stop playing games when you treat your life like a game.
And
You actually focus on it. Right?
And then when you play a game, you know that it's because I want to play a game, right?
Yes.
But the gamification of your life is, I think, it's the coolest thing.
Yeah, very interesting way to live.
The coolest thing I've ever did with my brain. This is just okay. And now I see everybody that I interact with as
NPC.
as a lot of player characters, right? And it's an MMO, right?
MMO.
Yeah, you need to figure out what motivates them. What they want to get out of you, what you're trying to get out of them, and what they like, what they dislike, and treat them like human beings, and not like NPCs. Like NPCs. Here's my cup. Sir, we will offer you 32 copper for that. No.
Okay. Great. I don't know where to from, but yes, beautiful glass. Okay, great. So then I know recently, I got to know you because of Mark, right? From Blockhead, right? So we're running a other show with Mark from Blockhead, Rice Media guys.
Blockhead.co.
Yeah, Blockhead.co from the ricemedia.co guys, right? Okay. So we're gonna do that, all the crypto stuff. Check out our new show. We haven't decided the name, but by the time this thing goes out, we will know the name, right? So And we were talking about it, and he was telling me like, you guys are running some NFT project or like some fractional ownership project, of Black Lotuses, for all these people that are outside that don't really want to buy the whole thing. How does this thing work?
Okay, so I think we go back to that spread, the bid ask price, right? So I had this scenario in my store where this guy comes in to sell us a card for 2.5K. And then his friend walks up the stairs and in a matter of hours and buys it from us for 4.
His friend.
Yeah. and we're like, okay, this is the easiest 1.5 grand we've made. A lot of which goes to paying the lights and keeping the lights on and paying all the guys. But why does this happen? And we realize there's a lot of things in the way. One is knowing that people want to sell and knowing that people want to buy, right? So buyers and sellers don't know each other. If they do know each other, sometimes they don't want to let each other know, right? Like sometimes you need to get out of a financial jam, so you got to sell something that you own, and sometimes you want to buy, but you don't want to be seen by your friends to be like balling too hard, right? So you kind of keep it on the down low and the on
company
the
wear masks. Like, hey, can I get Black Lotus?
you buy it from us. We're not going to tell people what you bought, right? GregoGames.com. And so
the best thing is he makes it very hard to cut. Because he's like saying it and plugging, very hard to cut. Very, very, very talented.
So then we realized, okay, it's about transparency. And then the truth is, and a lot of it is also about liquidity. Even if somebody wanted to buy it for, say, 2.5 and 4, meet in the middle, three something, they may not be liquid right at that current moment, right? But this guy needs to be liquid right now. Like he needs the 2.5 grand to go and pay for his kids, school fees or whatever. So we're like, okay, so this is kind of an interesting problem to solve. The other problem that we had to solve was that when it does happen peer to peer, a lot of them come to us to get the card certified. They're like, hey, I trust Ben because he's done this like forever. And can we go to him and he says that the car is legit, then I'll pay you. So they do that. They get me to check it. I tell them that it's legit. Then they just do the pay now like that in front of me. So I'm like, hey, we're leaving money on the table, right? I should charge for this service. But in the same way, I don't want to charge because I think that by charging, then it creates this kind of, it does in one frame of mind, give them like, if I paid for it, they must be legit, right? But also it kind of hampers the community, right? It's the kind of gatekeeping the free trade of these items. So what we're building is a project called Serenity, and it is a card vault. You drop off your cards with us, we certify them, and we grade them, and we put them in a vault. And then we give you digital proof of ownership. We give you an NFT, it's built on a blockchain, and you have access to it on a website, on your app, and you'll be able to trade ownership of that card in the vault between people, right? And you can go under a username, you can put your real name, you can set it to like auction bid kind of pricing or fixed bid pricing. You can do all of that. You can have your own gallery and then put your little NFTs, which will be like little grey ogre or like stuff like that. And yeah, you can just trade it without the card ever having to change hands until you're ready to take it out of the vault. Right, and you're ready to like either realize its utility or you just want to put it in your man cave at home or in a binder. You can just withdraw it from our facility, right? And so
just watch out for the rings.
Yeah, watch out for the rings. Yeah,
binder.
So that's the third thing. So the slogan is certified trade and safe keep. The idea is that hey, we're all getting older. You have kids and animals. Elderly parents,
kids and animals. Kids and
animals, elderly parents. And
thanks for that bridge, huh?
Yeah, and your parents want to throw away the cards. Like, hey, 小弟, this way, I wanted to.
Yeah. And randomly one day they have a spring cleaning vibes. Right?
Yeah.
Oh, 丢掉, I was like, 丢掉。
我的莲藕，
Lotus. Or you have kids and they're like, Daddy, what's this? Yeah, it looks yummy. Start biting on it. Or you have a dog who who just lick everything. Yeah. Even your PSA 10 Alpha Black Lotus, he's licking it. He's like,
yeah, because the plastic case I can bite.
But yeah, we're very interested to be able to roll this out. And then the financial products that like Reggie is alluding to is that at first it'll be a one-to-one relationship, right? You vault the card, you get a token. But then we want to be able to offer fractionalized ownership in the card. So either we issue you multiple tokens or on the blockchain, it's just fractional ownership of this one NFT that proves ownership of the card in the vault. The other things that we also want to do is to allow people to mortgage their cards, right? So take that token, go to somebody like BlockFi, and just say, look, I want to borrow some amount of crypto, and it's backed by this token. And this token is not backed by belief or any of the other crypto economics behind it. It's backed by a physical product that resides in the vault at guerrillagames.com. No,
Wait, there's a different name for the
it's
project.
a different
right?
name for the project. It's called Serenity.
Serenity.
Yeah, and yeah, it's inspired by Seinfeld. You know, Serenity Now. You know, he's this guy is trying to like manage his blood pressure and his stress and his anger management. So he's like, Serenity Now, because he's been listening to all these tapes. He's like, oh, Serenity Now. So all those things, fractionalized ownership, leveraging or mortgaging, and then we want to try and commoditize Magic the Gathering cards. So instead of thinking of them as unique items, which is the starting point for this project, we think of them as generic items.
I get it.
So you can take a position on this card because you think, hey, this card's going to be good in the future. And that helps cut out the advantage that these distributors and these people have, right? Because you can say, look, I can trade at the speed and the volume at which these guys can do it. Maybe not with the inside information that they have, but that's something that I can't solve now. If we get to the point where we can commoditize Magic cards or collectibles in general, right? So this doesn't just apply to Magic, but if we can get it commoditized to the point where people want to regulate it, that's a win for me, right? Because we built something that's pretty cool, right? It's to say, look, there are these gray market industries that could be regulated and should be regulated because people do dodgy things with them, right? And I think it could be cool. And the transfer to other collectibles is easy, right? You can get in another Pokemon expert, you get in another guy, you
got
scale
a
that.
back-end system, you can integrate, you scale up.
Yeah, but the idea starts with Magic because that's what we know. Yeah, and hopefully, I mean, you both of you will be invited to mint some cards with us, and you can do whatever you want, just to test the system, right?
Yeah.
You can grab a random like basic land, a forest from my pile, and be like, hey Ben, mint this, mint this. And be like, okay, sure, yeah. But to enable that, we also have to build on there's like a lot of
All the
developmental
backend stuff,
concerns.
When
and
is
stuff
this
like
coming out?
I'm looking at UI UX soon. And our hope is to roll out Q1 2023.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have a membership program in the store that's like a frequent flyer program. So that they'll be our first round of like trial users. And so that way we also reward them for their loyalty, but also get kind of very focused feedback as to like, hey, I thought it was great, but your UI is poop, right? I tried to use it on my phone. And the button didn't work.
Not loading.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Do you think you could, do this, do that? And so that will be a large part of it. And then we'll also populate it with a bunch of our own personal as well as business inventory, right? So we earmark some inventory to go from guerrillagames.com, and our own personal. Because I think if you build something, you have to believe it, right?
Yes. Yeah, and you put up, essentially, you build the base. Right?
Yeah.
Like, once again, market making, right? There's enough things moving around in the space, so it builds the community, builds the platform.
Yeah.
Very interesting, cool. And any last questions from you?
Actually, I want to ask is regarding the fractional ownership.
Yeah.
So those cards, what happens? So since you have like fractional ownership, so you'll keep the card and it will not be sold until somebody have all the ownership, or it will just stay unsold.
So I'll take a scissors. No. But so yeah, I think we will program a couple of different modes for it. But the idea would be that full return of all the tokens is required for withdrawal. Yeah. So there's somebody I pitched this idea to. One of the customers I've been talking to said, "Hey, this is a great movie. Imagine you own, like a couple of $1 million Black Lotus in the vault. Then you're going to hunt down the other like 19 people. It's like a
Transfer.
Benjamin Huang.
Transfer ownership.
They take my phone. Yeah. So I think that is the goal.
You mean a movie?
No.
We can produce. Yeah.
If you find someone who can play me, make sure he looks nice. But yeah, I think if there is another way to do it, I think there could be ways to do it. You force the guy to sell that kind of stuff. But I think organically and for like a very like primeval stage for us, very like early stage, we will just keep it simple by having full conversion of all the tokens before you can withdraw from the vault. Yeah.
I'm asking this because recently I think Logan Paul got the Pokemon illustrator,
Yeah.
Mosia for I think 5.4 million.
Yes.
So he's doing this concept also.
Yeah.
Let people have ownership of the cards. Of course, he say he won't sell lah.
It's been done before. The notion of
And then one day, when you enter the vault, say, where's the card?
One day he's not
Nobody
wearing, he's not
knows.
showing.
yeah. So okay, yeah, that's really it. Also, is that no one? It's hard to do this if you're not trusted, right? It's like you don't want to put money with a bank that you don't trust, right? So Logan Paul is trading on celebrity, and we're just trading on our community recognition and the fact that we lead and make the market in Singapore. But yeah, you're right. I think there are a lot of ideas like this. There's a company in America that tried to do this. I think were called Mythic Markets, and they tried to do fractionalized ownership, but they did it in a very in a manner with a lot of friction. They incorporated a company and where the sole asset was the card or box that you had invested in, and all of you were made shareholders. Which it's
It's messy.
It's messy. It's very very and that only works for very high value items also because all the mess that surrounds that needs to get paid somehow, right? And that can only be paid if the item is worth a significant amount. And so I think our approach would be better in that sense. And it's on the blockchain, so it's immutable, right? It's immutable in that sense. And you don't have to worry about somebody choke on you or that kind of stuff. And unlike the kind of crypto utopian ideal of decentralization. Decentralization.
Very loaded, that line.
The fact that it's centralized.
We'll ask Mark this question.
You should. Do you think cryptocurrency is a utopia?
You think,
Yeah.
Please, yes.
I mean, Mark, Mark,
We're waiting for you,
Waiting for you.
answers, yes.
But I think that the fact that it's centralized actually helps the product, right? Because it's like you have this kind of, as we put it again, we are the fulcrum for the retail environment here. We also want to be the fulcrum for this peer-to-peer marketplace, which is to say, look, you trust us because we have a secure facility and you trust our grading, you trust our certification.
Great, love it. Looking forward.
Yeah, for sure.
If you have a launch, you must ask us.
I will, and I'll be back here to talk about it with you.
Yes, please come on the show again.
With the shirt.
Don't need to keep saying already. The whole thing is being
ticker
filmed,
tape,
right? It's all there, right? Rolling banner.
Augmented reality t-shirt.
Great. I love it. Last question. I just want to just kind of hook out for our audience. Like today, what is the value of a Black Lotus 9? Let's say
A 9.
Yeah, because you have a 9, right?
Yeah.
So then they can kind of think of whether they want to rob your shop now. Control yourself, Control yourself.
He regretted tagging his
great.
shop.
Not good. But I think, with truth be told, most of that stuff doesn't stay in the store. So don't come to the store for that.
May or may not.
May or may not. If you want to buy, but also, I think it's like $200,000 US. 200 to that's would be a conservative estimate, I think. Yeah, if it's a strong 9. So it also depends. There's this whole subculture discussion about if you got it graded at this company at this time period, their graders are super strict. And all of that stuff, and so yours is actually a better 9 than this person who graded it here because it was. So what we're trying to do as well is to approach the notion of having ISO 9001 certification for card grading, and so we're building a textbook and a best practices approach that will also be made open to the public. So that part of what we're trying to do is education, right? To say, look, these are the lines along which we grade, and so you won't have complaints about hey, look, you don't know, but this was a print error in the late 90s, right? Or there were 2 print runs, that's why this was more deep colored than the other one. So the idea is to both educate as well as to provide very specific and very product-centered knowledge around Magic the Gathering. And when we're ready to expand, pick up somebody or a group of people who have that same kind of skill set, right? Who are not just generic graders, because a lot of the grading companies that you mentioned, a lot of them come from a sports cards background.
Yes.
So they don't know what a card that has been printed in a certain era looks like, and they will say things like, "Oh, this card is inked, it's hand cut, it's been altered," right? They will send the card back to you and say they can't grade it because of this error, and you're like, no, this error is known through every single card. Most famously, the Alpha Mock Sapphire, one of the most expensive cards, has a birthmark because the printer that was used to print that had this like little blemish there. So every single Alpha Mox Sapphire has this like, it's like a kiss line. It's like a two white lines in a curve like that. And that's the easiest way to tell that it's a fake from a real card, like, right? It doesn't have that thing because it's printed in China, right? Versus a card that was printed in 93. And it's all that product specific information that helps tell the cards apart. And there's a reason why, we do what we do.
Love it. So interesting. Cool stuff. Yeah, we'll see you around again. Whether we can get them on a show together, maybe we can talk about
You already know my
collectibles and
interesting
all that.
friends.
Yeah,
You're doing a whole show with them.
Definitely. So join us. Look at our shows. Check out Grey Ogre Games. I'll send him the invoice. So see you all next week.
Thank you.
Take care, coconuts. Bye.
Okay, so what's your best and worst investment ever?
Okay, so worst investment is easy.
Don't
No. So I think it's my worst and also my best investment. But I'll tell you a real best investment after that. The worst one was there was a time in 2015 where I saw an opportunity to arbitrage a large one particular card, and I got a guy who was working for me in the US to buy a lot of it. And then I tried to make it work, but in the time it took for my guy to gather all the cards for me to get them and bring them to Japan, something had happened. They had reprinted the card, and then its value plummeted. And so it's my worst investment because I lost a lot of money on that. But it's also my best investment because it really did tell me about the kind of the logistical challenges in the market, and to factor that into my decision making process. And it also is the inspiration for this new project that we're building, right? Because I want people to be able to do that quickly, right, without having to like solve all the logistics behind it and then finally out it somewhere. So that was the worst investment. And my friend and I, my friend who runs probably the second or the largest store and chain of stores in Japan, we laugh about it all the time. Yeah, we're like, hey, remember that time when you bought? Then I'm like, don't talk about it. I know what you're gonna say. Yeah. Best investment? I have a few best investments, and a lot of them still work for me in the store. Some of them. Your
Power 5, not the Power 9.
Yeah. It's people who I knew since I was a teenager. And our kind of tech officer. He was my best friend since I was 15. This guy who used to work for me at another store. These 3 other people who used to be players or kids that came to the store, and they're like, hey, we want to work here. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So those are the best investments. And obviously my wife. Yeah. She asked for a lot, but she's also the greatest investment that I made. Yeah. But so all of us, we're all investments, right? Our parents invested in us. Hopefully we give them some return.
Yeah, I think now they will all ask for pay rise.
Oh yeah, no, they know it. Like I every chance I get, I talk about them in this manner. Yeah, but also every chance they get, they talk to me about a pay rise.
Yes,
yeah, they're like,
it's a thing.
Hey Ben, it's that time of the year. Doing well, huh?
I think by the way, having these people is very important. They are the one who make it works.
Yeah, you're right. There's plenty of cardboard out there, and like I tell Reggie and you before that we started, I'm just a glorified Karanguni, right? Just a 5G
Without the
Karanguni.
horn.
Yeah, I can buy a horn if you want.
Okay, so move on to the second question. Second question is what is one investment that's less than $100 that so called like can I say impacted your life?
I think a water flosser. So it's that dental, when you go to a dentist, they have like a machine that sprays the water in your mouth. Yeah. This is a more focused one that helps you floss lah. So it's using a jet stream of water to like push out your stuff. And what that's meant is that my teeth are better. They're cleaner because there's less human error when it comes to the flossing. Yes. I do it much quicker. And it's not as easy to forget, right? Because you just do it one and done. You're gone. You're done for the day. Whereas like flossing, you're like the one lah, and it's largely hands free. You just one hand, so I can text while I'm doing it, or I can watch TV or something. Yeah. So great
can vouch
investment.
for that because I also have one. Right, you change your life. So if you've been forcing your teeth in a traditional way, this is the next best
And
way.
if in a dental emergency, if you something cracked or whatever, but you can't get to the doctor the next day or the dentist until the next day or 2 days, you can use it to clean out the cavity, right? You can use it to like kind of like tong, just
Yeah.
tong until you can get to a professional lah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll move on to the last question. I think where you consume your content now from. Where do you learn from?
I think there's a lot of traditional stuff that I try to learn from, lah, right? So I studied philosophy in university, so I have no
wow.
clue about how to run a business or how to like do all this economic stuff. So I watch a lot of like YouTube and people who like talk about like there's a lot of YouTube channels that I watch and I consume. I try to absorb everything. Like I learn about like hedge funds, venture capital, all these terms that all seem very far away to me. But the one thing that I learn a lot from and that is quite unexpected is I watch a lot of documentaries on drug cartels and like failed drug operations because it's easy if you're trying to build it's not easy, but it's easy to find information if you're trying to build a hedge fund or venture capital firm, but it's very hard to build a magic store because you can't go and watch a video about like, oh, this is how I succeeded and I built this. So then you have to go and look for other grey market entities, right? But there's not a lot of people who do like, oh, this is how I built a $1 million, Yu-Gi-Oh or wine, business. And then you realize, okay, but there's a lot of coverage for the most illicit things in the world, which are like drugs, right? So then like, okay, let me learn from them. So I take away really good business principles. The principle that, for example, the product is the most expensive, the furthest away from the point of origin, right? That's one of the things I took away from watching a drug documentary. But it's not to say that I aspire to be like that, right? It's just that I try and distill the learning principles from the thing that I'm watching. And I just erase all the like, oh, we go into this turf war or whatever. No. I look at the business principles behind it, right? And to me, that's the weirdest thing that I watch that is actually super educational.
Yeah, think about it. Actually, the business model is somehow similar compared to hedge fund because it's very hard to relate, especially it's like trading cards.
Yeah. But so hopefully that's what our new project will solve, is that you can actually someday trade the cards like every other thing you can trade, like, right? There will be an exchange for it, and there will be and you don't have to physically meet somebody and like, hey, here's the card, give me $5, right? Like you can put an order for like 25 of them, right? And then So, but yeah, that's what I learned. That's what I learned a lot from, is just to observe these people. And yeah, that's super weird. Yeah, MAS, if you want to come up.
No, it's not illegal. MTG.
It's not illegal. And consuming documentaries is not illegal.
Yes. Learning from, I think that's something that I think rarely talk about, but very interesting.
Yeah.
From this kind of point of view.
I think people watch it a lot of times to consume that illicit, like oh, so dangerous, oh, so risky, right? They get this kick from it. But for me, it's like, oh, that's interesting. That's a really good way to do business. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I can't relate to all of it, because there's some very bad stuff. But I can relate to the more economic stuff to it. I'm, oh yeah, okay. Repackaging, branding.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks.